Thanks for viewing my channel. This is a brief excerpt from my book, Failsafe, The Kennedy Curse Fused with Science Fiction, written by me, Susan MeeLing, Reverend Susan MeeLing, Reverend MeeLing, Our Lady Dori, Belle, a few other names I've been called over the years. Over time, he observed an array of oddities, seemingly purposefully scattered in an organized manner. Throughout the space, he saw parchments encased with glass to keep dust particles away from the aged material and artifacts. Moving closer to one of the pedestals illuminating the cases, Luke swooned over one particular piece of papyrus parchment paper with odd symbols. His eyes scanned over the other inscriptions of the representations within the pictures and the foreign writings. Luke turned his head to the side to notice several cases of decorated beveled glass protecting larger, meticulously preserved carved stones. Several etched pieces of wood were embedded with various crystals. Some with stone and ceramic tablets had no adornments. Incense plumes of perfume filled the air and slowly eased Luke. Beginning to forget the corridor problems to find Maggie, Luke's mind continued to fill with wonder. Turning his head to the side randomly when something caught his attention, he quickly became distracted by the next historical piece. While attempting to look at the various symbols throughout paintings, he could not help but feel more curiosity arise. "Where are we?" Luke asked as he knelt onto one knee to stare at a large vase next to a desk. She slightly touched one of the dried flowers within one arrangement. "We are in a time that is not within the human understanding of measure here." Noticing the furthered confusion, Maggie added to complicate matters while also being in a place unable to be interpreted by any mind of mankind. Tilting his head towards one shoulder, Luke asked, "What do you mean, Maggie?" Grinning, she looked towards him to ask, "Are you willing to take a journey with me to listen to an origin story of epic proportions?" Chuckling, Luke said, "You mean like the Bible, evolution, mythology, and the like?" He added sarcastically, "Is it possibly a story about aliens and the unknown in outer space?" Luke sighed before Christopher startled him on purpose by interrupting the conversation. "No, silly." Christopher put one hand on his hip after placing a tray on the table. "All of the ideas combined, and more, are just the tip of the iceberg." Waving one of his hands, Christopher added, "I am sure Maggie will explain by starting with once upon a time." "Is that not the way most origin stories begin?" Luke asked sarcastically. Maggie interjected, lowering her hands in a soothing manner. "Christopher, calm yourself." Christopher added with the largest gusto attitude from the center of his being and flowing throughout his pores to respond ever so dramatically. "This is a long story with a beginning, a middle, and the end leading to a new beginning of sorts." Gently touching Luke after rolling her eyes while Maggie said, "Remember, time is relative." Maggie took a moment to walk towards the corner of the room to light a new stick of incense before she sighed and whispered, "Just for you, Luke. Once upon a time began not with Adam and Eve, but with Lee and Dong." Christopher exclaimed, "Ma'am!" Stopping her maneuver towards the two males, she raised her hands, asking, "What now, Christopher?" Christopher begged for understanding, growing jealous as she ignored his question of, "How has this guy earned your business information so soon?" Observing his perplexed facial and body expressions, Maggie kept eye contact with Christopher, asking, "Would you please make some tea for Luke and bring a few scones in case he needs something to eat?" Wrapping one arm around Luke's waist as she continued gently moving her other hand up and down his arm, saying, "This might take quite a bit before he comprehends." Luke inquired, "Comprehend what exactly?" "Are you ready for the story told to me by my Bakung, which was told to him by his Bakung, and so on, only from Bakung?" Maggie asked Luke innocently, nervously nodding his head up and down as she led him to a comfortable chair to rest, as she said, "One day, a long, long, long time ago." She paused with the serious tone of laughter before saying, "Oh, I am so sorry, but I just could not resist that one." Without more than a few seconds passing, Luke laughed and his tension slowly eased. The two enjoyed the brief small talk while Maggie removed herself from the area standing closest to Luke in order to walk behind a bamboo screen. Only able to watch her silhouette moving behind the partition, he oogled her physique with his eyes. Watching the shadow release the spiral steel custom corset from her small frame instantly caused all of Luke's senses to stand at attention. Watching her shadow of her bosom bounce lightly as the tight fabric released from her flesh, he lost the ability to breathe briefly. He saw what seemed to be a t-shirt over herself just before Luke watched her outline reach for another item. Observing the fast movements to remove the skirt around her waist, he instantly fell over with disappointment. He noticed she grabbed an item looking like a pair of pants, and all hope for a sensual encounter had left his thoughts. Walking towards Luke in a pair of yoga pants and a long t-shirt, she said softly, "Thank you for making the tea for him, Christopher," Luke asked while beginning to show physical symptoms of his stress. "Who is this person to you truly, Maggie?" Standing up with his hands on his hips, he accused, "This man does not deserve the title with such refinement as butler." "I have never met a butler with such an attitude towards guests," Luke exclaimed. He added, "I am quite unnerved how this male speaks to you as well, Maggie." Shaking one finger shamefully towards Christopher without fazing him, Luke stated, "You are not allowed to disgrace the job by labeling yourself with the esteem of a butler." Maggie jumped out from the screen quickly to stand between the two males, preparing for fisticuffs, exclaiming, "You are correct. He is not solely my butler." The males, standing close to each other with Maggie between them, kept huffing and puffing visibly within their chest and their raised clenched fists as she said, "We need to sit down and I will clarify. Looking towards Luke, she tranquilly stated, I will explain who Christopher is in full, with details. Turning to make eye contact with Christopher, she added, I need to explain to both of you the reasons for the militarized police search. Both males slowly lowered their fists and gradually backed away while continuing to hold the cold stares in the other's direction. As Maggie said, to explain, one needs the understanding of the other, and vice versa. The two men kept eye contact, attempting to stare down the other one for alpha status. Smacking both males on their upper arms simultaneously, Maggie broke their concentration with an additional pinch. Using her long nails, she plucked several hair strands from the knuckles of their hands just when they were going to complain of their treatment, forcing each other to lower themselves into their separate seats, each keeping attention on the other. Christopher continued to show his contempt for Luke, just as Luke could not bear the sight of Christopher. Maggie made her way towards her chair and picked up the seat to move closer to the center of the two combative males. Knowing the instant uproar to come shortly, she braced herself for the aftermath. Sighing as she relaxed in comfortable clothing, Maggie appreciated the soft cloth covering her skin. Christopher snidely declared, I brought everyone something to drink, since I figured we would be up here for a while. He put a plate on the table in front of Luke in shock as Maggie added, I appreciate you bringing my coffee to me without asking. Both smiled a bit nervously as she continued, Your anticipatory behaviors have improved dramatically since our last talk. Grinning from ear to ear when he handed both cups and saucers from the tray towards Maggie and Luke, while Christopher commented, I hope I did not miss out on anything too crucial, since you are giving the newbie unlimited access to the information. Maggie looked at Christopher and said, What makes you think so? Luke held the saucer from the teacup while sipping as Maggie responded, I was only able to get changed out of my gear, but I have not expanded upon the conversation, discussion, or talk. What did you do with each of the bulletproof insert pieces for the corset? Christopher demanded while putting the tray on the table, crossing his arms with immediate disapproval. Waving one hand nonchalantly, Maggie said, You know me, Christopher. Chuckling to tease him, she explained to Luke with excitement, Each of the individual bulletproof plates are in the suitcase labeled with each panel number. Christopher rolled his eyes while asking Maggie as Luke trembled, What did you do with the cases which move in conjunction with the spiral steel boning? Chuckling as Maggie rolled her eyes dramatically, The carbon fiber canes are inside of the cases, inside of the labeled boxes. Sighing, she said to assure his anal retentive behavior, The cases for the canes are in their designated slots within their specific bag, too. Scoffing, Maggie added, You are beyond hilarious with your sarcasm. Christopher rolled his eyes in retaliation, saying, I assume you put the other weapons away as well. Luke interjected jokingly, Why stop the open discussion and dialogue origin now when you could tell me why you were wearing a bulletproof corset and who knew anyone would make such an item? Noticing the lack of enthusiasm from either one, he added, It is not as if I had no idea she had weapons beyond the ideal use for sexual gratification. Laughing wholeheartedly as Christopher coughed. Yeah. Barely able to continue, he added while choking. Keep on telling yourself that, Luke. Continuing his laughter. Maggie is far from normal. Luke looked towards Maggie, begging, "Were you armed this whole time?" He stomped one foot as Luke demanded understanding. "Who are you, Maggie, and why are you this way?" Leaning closer to her, he begged, "Please be truthful and tell me whether or not you're cheating on me with him." Christopher put one hand in Luke's face while popping one hip to the side, stating, "I am her butler, and I do not need to answer to you who I am to Maggie beyond her butler." Though Maggie attempted to calm the situation once more, she knew she needed to speak, and after a slight pause of silence, Christopher bluntly stated without provocation, "I am homo-flexible, and we are not dating." Brushing his shirt while Christopher added, "We are in a business arrangement of which I am not sure you deserve to understand." Looking to Christopher as Maggie returned her eyes to Luke, saying, "What would you like to discuss?" Luke asked, "Are you cheating on me?" Shaking her head, "Cheating on you requires us to be an exclusive couple, and that is not something we have labeled." Luke exclaimed, "I have been faithful to you this entire time." She shrugged nonchalantly, adding, "I appreciate the loyalty, but this was not defined prior to this discussion." Looking off and away from Luke's direction, she said, "We discussed limitations throughout, and if having an involved butler is a problem for you, I understand. Though I promise he and I are not romantically involved. In the slightest." Maggie attempted to reassure Luke as he looked away, pouting. Throwing his hands up and moving closer to Maggie, he replied softly, "I am not having a problem. I'm just needing time to process this entire... I do not know what to call this." "Fate," Christopher interrupted, rolling his eyes to add, "Ugh, gross." Maggie wandered off in the room while Christopher and Luke spoke together. Thanks for tuning in. Subscribe to my channel. This has been a reading excerpt from Failsafe, The Kennedy Curse Fused with Science Fiction Fantasy, written by me, Susan MeeLing, Reverend Susan MeeLing, Reverend MeeLing, Lady Dori, Belle. I have a few nicknames and assumed names, technically. You guys have a good one. Subscribe to my channel.